Well, the Agoa summit comes at a time of increased global conflict, and concerns have been raised from some in the business sector in South Africa about relations between the United States and this country. At the moment, we know that South Africa and the United States have taken completely different positions, especially when you consider what's happening now with the war between Israel and Hamas. For more on this, let's speak to the Black Business Council's Gregory Mofokeng. A very good evening to you, Mr. Mofokeng. Good to have your time. So, the U.S. President Joe Biden issued a note just before the beginning of this gathering saying, "I strongly support the reauthorization of Agoa." Does that lay to rest any concerns, any nervousness that local business people may have had about its future, especially as relates to South Africa?
Well, it does to a certain extent, and good evening to you and to your viewers. It does to a certain extent, but we do understand that there's still a lot of lobbying to be done in Capitol Hill to make sure that the extension is properly processed through the U.S. system. And obviously, we don't only want an extension, but we want an enhancement, of this trade instrument.
It was interesting to hear earlier this week some reporting about local business organizations calling for a softer tone, if you will, on what's currently going on in the Middle East. South Africa has spoken clearly in its condemnation of Israel's actions. It's also condemned the Palestinian armed group Hamas, but said it still stands very much in solidarity with the people of the Gaza Strip and the broader Palestinian community. Do you think that poses a threat to much of the bargaining, the negotiating that will happen this week?
Well, to be honest with you, that has not come up in our discussions with our counterparts from the U.S. We've been here. We've had a very productive day today, and the geopolitical issues have really not featured much in our discussions with our U.S. counterparts. Obviously, the ministers, the trade ministers, are meeting tomorrow. Maybe the issue will come up in those discussions, but as far as business is concerned, it was business as usual today. Geopolitical issues did not come up at all. We were strictly focused on the business of the day, which is how do we, lobby our governments to extend Agoa and to obviously, as I said earlier, refine it as we go forward.
And how did you as business answer those two questions?
Well, firstly, there is definitely concurrence between ourselves and the rest of, business on the African continent, as well as our U.S. counterparts that, we endorse the move by our various governments to extend Agoa by another 10 years from 2025. And I'm also excited to report to you and to the viewers that, in fact, some of our U.S. counterparts were actually, taking a posture that says, Agoa should be made permanent because they did say that similar arrangements, which are more permanent, do exist between the U.S. and other trade blocs. So we're quite excited about that. And secondly, we're looking at, when one looks at the refinement and the enhancement of the instrument, we're looking obviously at ensuring that there is more investments that are made in South Africa and on the continent. We also are looking forward to, a technical assistance that our counterparts in the U.S. have offered to us, and also the expansion of the product lines that we are currently exporting to the U.S.
And what more, just on that point, what more does South African business think it wants to, at this point, get into the American market? Because there's been a great deal of conversation for years now about ensuring that this is an arrangement that works evenly or equally for both sides.
Well, it is a mutually beneficial agreement, I must say, because one will also remember that there are a lot of U.S. companies that are having operations in South Africa and exporting to the U.S. So it does work to benefit both, South Africa as well as the U.S. Now, as far as we are concerned in South Africa, we obviously do want to see more product lines added. This instrument was entered into in the year 2000. And since then, our economy has expanded. There are new sectors that we will wish to see, benefiting from this Agoa instrument.
There is the issue. I mean, even when you look at Joe Biden's note, the U.S. President's statement ahead of the gathering, he does say that while he's committed to working with Congress to ensure that this is basically renewed beyond 2025, in America we know that the tone very much changes often in the White House, even in Congress, in fact, based on who is in charge, just because of how fluid the victories tend to be when it comes to who wins the election. And they've got one, as we do, in the next year. Does that worry you as local business?
It does, and in fact, as you know, as business, we cannot operate in an environment of policy uncertainty. So it does worry us. However, we are hopeful that, taking cue from our U.S. counterparts, that they will lobby the U.S. Government to ensure that the extension is granted prior to the elections next year. So we are all going to make sure that all hands are on deck to make sure that South